flipping 57th take or something of this video. I hate just sitting in front of a camera in an empty room talking. Right, I'm going to give a shout out to a guy called Woodland Camp and Craft. Now, I've been camping with him in the Lake District, and hopefully I'm going to go camping with him again in the future. He's a single dad. He goes camping with his daughter Lily, and yeah, I've known them for quite a long time now. They're part of our group chat on the MTFU, and he's got a really good channel. He does a lot of live chats, does a lot of camping videos with his daughter. Also, he does a lot of which I quite like, camping tricks and hacks and tricks, I think it's called, where you get lots of little hints and stuff that, truthfully, right, people can say, oh, I knew that, but we didn't know that. So yeah, worth a watch. Also, he does a walk to fitness, and everybody can respect a person that wants to, you know, better themselves by getting fit. And him being a smaller channel than mine, I do feel that it's our duty as a big channel to support the younger, smaller channels and help them grow. So yeah, pop across to Kevin at Woodland Camp and Craft and give him a sub and tell him I sent you. And yeah, I'll put a link in somewhere down here or up here somewhere. But on a different note, I've still got my list here. The updates that are coming on our camps. Now, if you watch me quite regularly, you all know that I have built hundreds of shelters, and that's not me overestimating or embellishing anything. I've literally built hundreds of shelters. We've built a debris village. We've used natural moss. We've used natural brushes. We've used wood. We've used birch bark. We've used pine boughs. We've used pretty much every natural, every natural source to make a shelter that we could possibly think of or find in our woodlands. So you all know that my main camps are my debris village, my main woodland camp, which I haven't been at for about 5 or 6 months now because I've been giving it a rest, allow the firewood to, you know how it works, you've got to rotate around these things, you can't just hammer one camp all the time. My moss camp, my riverbank camps, there's 8 of them, and a lot of them haven't been on, well, some of them haven't been on video yet, some of them have. Some of them, hopefully, when the weather gets better and they stop flooding so regularly, I can start using them again. But with the shelters that we've built to date, I do believe that everything we've built has advanced our skill set and made us better at shelter building by doing it so many times. But I don't believe in keeping one shelter forever and glorifying that shelter and sleeping in that every single week. Every shelter I've made, I've slept in multiple times. The village, Tim and me slept in multiple times. Adam, Gary, everybody slept in it multiple times. So I do believe once you camp as much as I do, that it's easy to get bored with these things. I mean, you see a moss shelter and it's like, whoa, it's a moss shelter, it's cool, it's living. But to me, it's just, it's just a shelter that I built. And I think it's time for a little change in a lot of my camps. So me and Tim had a long discussion about the debris village, and what we've decided to do for the rest of the winter is we're going to, I think, at some point strip down the debris village and make it into one ultimate shelter with the kiln between 2 raised beds. So instead of buying a wood stove that I was thinking about buying, a Frontier stove, I thought, well, why don't we just build the shelter around the existing kiln, and that can be our wood stove. Also, when summer comes around, the village will be made back into a village. It's just with the fact that the woodland was cut down at the start of last year, the wind is terrible. I can't have a 2-story there because it gets blown over. You've got 60 to 80 mile an hour winds hitting that land and everything gets destroyed eventually. So we figured if we just put all the materials into one ultimate shelter and have that kiln in the centre of the shelter between the 2 raised beds, then it'll be absolutely awesome. And then when the better weather comes around, we can expand it and build it back to a village and start working with new materials that grow on the land. Also the moss shelter. I've had the moss shelter standing now for a year, and the moss was still living, undoubtable. You know, there wasn't one part of it that died, and that was maybe the fifth time I've actually made a shelter entirely of moss that has stayed alive. And even the moss spread, you can all see in the videos that it did. I had a lot of people saying, why do you take moss? It grows back so slowly. Like, all the bits that I took that moss from have totally recovered by now. Well, literally, we were checking them last week for the riverbank camp, and everything's, you know, fixed itself. And I take a small bit from here, a small bit from there. I don't strip down a whole area because that's just foolish. So the moss camp, I think I might, since I have the skill of taking the moss off while it's still being alive, I think I'm going to do that and maybe make a different structure and then put the same moss back on top of it so that we've got a different shelter to play at the moss camp too. Also, you've seen in my last video that I uploaded, me and Tim did some serious work in building log and moss walls at the riverbank camp, which is a floodplain, but again, I get reminded a lot of time off my viewers, people saying that you shouldn't camp on a floodplain and you shouldn't build shelters on a floodplain, but I mean, that is, I specifically go for that location because it's the floodplain, and the reasons being is I can build a camp there 1 month and it'll flood 2 months later and I've got a complete clean slate to start again. So I think a spot like that advances your shelter building and encourages you to build and build and build and build and build and get that skill to do so. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I've got to say in this one. I'm going out camping soon, so hopefully there'll be a 2-nighter up before long. I'm going to start putting a little bit of adventure because, again, sometimes when you camp as much as I do, sometimes things can get a bit stale, and in order to prevent that you need to drastically change some things, whether it be the minimal kit that you take out with, or a different kit, or no kit, or, you know, a new build, or, you know, anything can shift it up a bit and make it, you know, spicy again for you. So yeah, I appreciate you listening to me ramble, and hope it wasn't too boring. For the rest of this year, it's all about camping and dirt time, cooking lots of food. I don't know if I'm going to... Yeah, clay. I get asked a lot about the clay tiles that I started, and unfortunately, you know, I live in Cumbria in England, which is extremely wet and cold 90% of the year. You know, we get like 3 weeks of summer a year, and even then that's probably raining. So, you know, if you try and compare what I mean, I get a lot of people saying primitive technology does this and primitive technology does that. Primitive technology lives in a place where there's sun like 30 hours a day, you know what I mean? That's a little bit exaggeration, but you know, he's got sun to dry the clay, he's got dry areas and that. I mean, in Cumbria, it is damn near impossible to dry a set of 40 tiles, you know. It's just, it rains, and unless you've got a shelter big enough and warm enough, you know, and you can't dry them on the ground because they absorb the moisture from the ground. So yeah, but definitely visiting the clay again. My end goal would be to have a clay shelter, fired and everything. That would be totally epic. But that's a long way yet. Well, when I say a long way, maybe summer. You know, we'll be able to, because I mean, we get 5 hours a daylight now in winter, and it's not really a lot, you know. It's just enough to wake up in the morning, get your breakfast, get firewood enough for the next 15 hours of darkness, you know what I mean? And that's pretty much what camping's about at the moment. But we are throwing in a lot more builds and yeah, a lot more adventures, and I hope you all stay tuned. And I really appreciate the constant support and everything that I get from my channel. And go and check out Woodland Camp and Craft and tell him I sent you, and we'll see you all again soon.